Um, Welcome back to the deep dive. We know you are here today because you want to, bypass the fluff and get straight to those aha moments.
Exactly.
And let me tell you, today's mission is tailored exactly for that. We are exploring this really massive interconnected blueprint.
Shoot.
Yeah, it's extracted from a series of videos by a YouTube channel called Productivity Accelerator. And the central premise of this whole deep dive, it's about how to fundamentally rewire your relationship with work.
Work, your habits, your entire environment, really.
Yeah, to fast track your way ahead of 99% of people, which, it is a bold claim.
Very bold.
But the material brings a genuinely fascinating framework to back it up.
It really does, because we are synthesizing hours of video material into a single cohesive framework today.
Right.
And our goal isn't just to list out what you should do. We want to analyze the psychology behind it.
The why.
Exactly, the why. By understanding the underlying neurological and social mechanics of why these strategies work, you'll be prepared to take these insights and apply them to your own life immediately.
Yeah.
It's about looking at how we interact with the world around us and recognizing the invisible systems that govern our success or our stagnation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the foundation of this entire blueprint starts with a rather jarring, provocative premise.
It does.
The argument is that we are currently living in a low-status society. Now, to be completely clear to you listening, we are impartially reporting on the content provided here.
Right, we have to state that.
Yeah, we aren't endorsing these viewpoints or taking any political or social sides, but we absolutely have to convey this starting point so the rest of the framework makes sense.
So what's the core of that claim?
The claim is that modern society actively incentivizes shortcuts, sensationalism, and low-effort behavior. They argue that our education system hasn't genuinely improved its curriculum since the Industrial Revolution, and that the health industry pushes pills, Botox, and extreme cosmetic surgeries over, basic foundational solutions like sunlight and exercise.
Exactly. And the critique extends directly into the entertainment and music industries, too.
Oh yeah, they went hard on that.
They did. The material argues that these industries frequently promote a lack of genuine skill. There is an example given of a deaf rapper who went viral specifically for his inability to articulate lyrics.
Right.
And they frame this as proof of a lowered societal bar. The blueprint also calls out the modern landscape of celebrities and influencers.
Like who?
Well, they mention figures like Kim Kardashian, Cardi B, and YouTube pranksters like Jack Doherty.
Okay.
The argument presented is that these figures are famous for manufactured drama, hypersexualized imagery, or simply being obnoxious in public rather than providing actual tangible societal value.
So society is rewarding the wrong things.
According to this view, yes. Society rewards these manufactured lifestyles, creating a negative feedback loop where an entire generation tries to emulate a low-effort path to fame and money.
When you hear that laid out, it sounds incredibly bleak. It sounds like a society in decline.
It does sound depressing at first glance.
But the framework actually flips this entirely. It takes this pessimistic view and says, wait, this is actually incredible news for you.
What's fascinating here is the silver lining they extract. Because the societal bar has dropped so low, standing out and becoming what they term high value requires surprisingly little effort compared to decades past.
Right.
It is a total refutation of the hyper-competitive mindset you often see peddled online. For instance, the material specifically calls out the worldview popularized by influencers like Andrew Tate.
Oh, the alpha male stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They often frame success as this brutal zero-sum competition where one person's wealth fundamentally comes at the expense of another's.
Like there's only so much pie.
Exactly.
Right.
But this blueprint completely rejects that. Someone else making $10 million does not stop you from making $1 million.
It is the classic lion analogy. If a lion is chasing you and a group of people, you do not have to be the fastest person in the world to survive.
You just can't be the slowest.
You just cannot be the slowest. Life in this framework is the lion. And avoiding the bottom 99%, avoiding that trap of the low-status society, is just about pacing yourself slightly ahead of the pack.
So how do we actually do that?
Well, the very first step is defining a personal vision. Because if you don't define one for yourself, society, your boss, your family, your peers, they will inevitably assign one to you.
And their vision for your life rarely serves your best interests.
Never does.
To help you define that vision, the material offers a highly effective thought experiment called the funeral test.
I loved this part.
It's intense. You are asked to mentally walk up to your own casket at your funeral. You look inside and you realize It is you.
Morbid, but okay.
Right. But the exercise is to write down exactly what you want the people around that casket to be saying about you. And there is a deep psychological reason for doing this.
Which is,
Human beings suffer from something called hyperbolic discounting. We are neurologically wired to prioritize immediate rewards over long-term gains.
like eating the donut now instead of having abs next year.
Precisely. We can plan for next week, maybe next month, but projecting 50 years into the future, our brains genuinely struggle to visualize that future self as us.
It feels like a stranger.
Yes. The funeral test forces a bypass of that cognitive blind spot. You project to the very end, establish the legacy, and then mathematically reverse engineer the daily steps required to become that specific person.
I think that reverse engineering aspect is key. And once you have that end-of-life vision, the next recommendation is to write an infinite goals list.
Infinite.
Yeah, write down endless goals, unrealistic goals, crazy goals. The logic is that people who lose momentum in life, or who become deeply depressed after achieving massive initial success, usually do so simply because they run out of goals.
That makes sense.
They cross the finish line, they set at 20, and at 30, they have nothing left to strive for. If your list is infinite, your motivation never dries up.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the prime example used to illustrate this. When Arnold was a young, relatively poor immigrant from Austria, his ultimate vision was to become a movie star, just like his idol, Reg Park.
But he started with bodybuilding.
Right. To get there, he first set his sights on becoming the greatest bodybuilder in the world. He clung to this vision so tightly that he turned down incredibly lucrative, immediate offers that would have distracted him from that path.
And when he finally pivoted to acting,
Hollywood agents told him he was too massive, his name was unpronounceable, and his thick Austrian accent was a total deal breaker.
but he didn't care.
No, his vision shielded him. He didn't let society's parameters dictate his potential because his internal parameters were already set in stone.
It is fascinating how unlocking that internal vision directly dictates how you operate in the physical world. And the framework argues that once your mind is set, the next logical frontier is your physical foundation, your health. Yeah. The statistics provided are stark. Roughly 60% of Americans are overweight, and a staggering 5% actually work out consistently.
5%. That's incredibly low.
The baseline is so low that just taking basic care of your physical vehicle instantly catapults you ahead of the pack. There's a brilliant quote included from the entrepreneur Naval Ravikant.
Oh, I know this one.
A healthy man wants 1,000 things. A sick man wants only one.
It is a profound quote because it highlights how foundational biology is to ambition. If your physical vehicle is constantly fatigued or failing, your infinite goals list becomes completely irrelevant.
You literally do not have the energy to pursue it.
Exactly. The material recommends starting simply with calisthenics. But for those wanting to optimize further, they suggest a specific cycle of micro cuts and micro bulks.
How does that work?
Gaining and losing 5 pounds slowly over 8 to 12-week cycles.
Which is so different from the crash diets we always hear about.
Precisely. And the science behind why this works better is rooted in human evolution. Drastic, rapid weight changes shock the system.
Right.
When you crash diet, your body spikes cortisol and triggers an evolutionary starvation response, hoarding fat and eating away at muscle.
It thinks you're starving in the wilderness.
Exactly. By using 8 to 12-week microcycles, you bypass that alarm system. You are tricking your biology into adapting safely, which builds a much more sustainable physical foundation.
And it isn't just about the internal feeling of health. It's about the social leverage of aesthetics. This is step 3 of the framework.
The halo effect.
Yeah, getting your clothes tailored, getting a decent haircut, presenting yourself well. Not out of vanity, but because of a deeply ingrained cognitive bias known as the halo effect.
Yes, the halo effect is a psychological phenomenon where our overall impression of a person influences how we feel and think about their character.
So if you look good,
If you are physically in shape and well-dressed, people subconsciously code those visual cues as competence. They will instinctively view you as smarter, wealthier, more reliable, and more trustworthy.
it is an unfair cognitive bias, without a doubt.
It is, but the blueprint argues that you must understand and utilize it. The material references the anime Lookism, where a character's social reality transforms simply because he inhabits a more attractive body.
Interesting.
They also point to Bradley Cooper, noting how his height and classic good looks undeniably smooth his path in Hollywood, opening doors faster than they open for equally talented but less conventionally attractive actors.
They even point to the movie Limitless. When the main character takes that NZT pill that unlocks his brain's full potential, His very first move is not sitting down to code the next great app or reading a dictionary.
What does he do?
He goes out, gets a haircut, buys a tailored suit, and starts working out. Because the smartest version of him understands that aesthetics are a tool to manipulate how the world responds to him.
Wow.
And once the world responds better, opportunities open up, which leads us directly into step 4, income.
Increasing your income is the next pillar, but the material emphasizes that you don't necessarily need to take on massive debt with a traditional 4-year college degree to do it.
The landscape has totally shifted.
It has. They advocate for acquiring high-income modern skills that have direct market value. Things like free Google certifications, learning to code, or mastering CRM software.
Let's actually pause on that because things like CRM software sound incredibly dry.
It does sound dry. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. But the insight here is that when you learn CRM, you are learning the exact digital infrastructure that businesses use to track revenue and retain clients.
Oh, so you're at the center of the money.
You are learning the plumbing of modern commerce. When you master the tools that directly generate or protect a company's money, you make yourself instantly indispensable. You demonstrate undeniable value.
And for those who are younger, the framework advocates for earning what they call a master's degree in life.
I like that phrase.
Yeah, this means taking calculated high-risk swings early on. Start the business, try to flip the real estate, purposely put yourself in situations where you might completely fail.
Why, though?
The logic is asymmetric risk. When you're young, the cost of failure is low, but the educational upside is astronomical. You learn more about economics, human behavior, and resilience from failing at a real-world venture than you do from living life safely on repeat in a classroom.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the foundation of your life, your vision, your health, your appearance, your finances, these are the load-bearing pillars.
Right.
But a foundation isn't a building. To actually construct the life you want, you need other people. Which brings us to the 5th step, relationships.
Now, this is where I found the material taking a really sharp, almost controversial turn.
You mean the spreadsheet?
Yes. The blueprint is incredibly methodical about networking. They argue that most people passively sit around waiting to be invited to things and then get resentful when they feel lonely.
Which is true.
Sure. The solution provided is to stop waiting and be the organizer. But the specific tactic they recommend is using a spreadsheet method for your social life, tracking acquaintances, their contact info, and their specific interests on a literal spreadsheet.
I can see why you'd pause there.
I have to push back on this a bit. Tracking human beings on a spreadsheet, that sounds incredibly transactional, maybe even a bit manipulative. How does the source reconcile that analytical approach with building genuine, warm friendships?
It's a very fair critique, and it does sound cold on the surface, but the material frames it not as manipulation, but as highly intentional curation.
Oh, so?
Think about it. How often do friendships fade simply because of logistical friction or forgetting to follow up?
All the time.
The spreadsheet removes the friction by noting specific details like whether someone is obsessed with tennis or anime or deep philosophical debates versus someone who just wants to hit the bars on a Friday night. You are actually respecting their preferences.
Okay, I see. So you are categorizing them to ensure they actually enjoy the time you spend together.
Yeah.
You don't invite the deep discussion people to a loud nightclub where they will be miserable.
Right.
And you don't invite the bar people to a quiet 2-hour book club.
Exactly. It's about engineering an environment where people thrive. And the crucial second half of this strategy is the follow-up.
What's the rule there?
You have to lead with a giving hand, offer to pay for the first round of drinks, or host the dinner at your place. And if they don't text you back, you cannot take rejection personally.
People are just busy.
People are overwhelmed. The spreadsheet reminds you to try again a week later without the emotional baggage of feeling slighted.
That makes a lot of sense when you frame it as removing logistical friction. And this intentionally engineered environment becomes vital when we hit the next major hurdle in the blueprint.
Work.
Yeah, the fact that 85% of people absolutely hate their jobs, that is a staggering statistic.
It really is.
The framework attributes this massive dissatisfaction directly to the modern education system. They argue that school systemically kills natural curiosity. It forces rote memorization, making kids memorize the Pythagorean theorem just to pass a standardized test, instead of teaching practical, real-world skills like personal finance, negotiation, or emotional regulation.
Furthermore, the school system actively punishes experimentation. In the real world, as we discussed with the master's degree in life, you have to fail 1,000 times to find the right answer.
Yeah.
But in school, you are graded negatively for every single failure. This conditions people over 2 decades to be terrified of risk.
This conditioned fear of failure leads straight into what the material calls the gumball trap.
The cartoon.
Yeah, there's a scene in the cartoon The Amazing World of Gumball where a store clerk suddenly realizes his entire existence is a loop. Wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep. Repeat. He has no destination.
Just existing.
The argument here is that this lack of a destination working just for the sake of surviving the week is exactly why that 85% of people are miserable.
To escape the gumball trap and actually find profound satisfaction in your work, you have to fundamentally rewire how your brain perceives effort. You must tie your daily pain to your long-term vision.
The vision from step one.
Exactly. The blueprint brings Arnold Schwarzenegger back here. While filming Conan the Barbarian, Arnold had to do take after take of a sword fighting scene until his hands and legs were bruised and actively bleeding.
Brutal.
The director asked if he needed to stop, and Arnold refused. Why? Because the temporary physical pain was irrelevant to him. He was solely focused on the finished product.
He didn't even feel it.
The pain was actually pleasurable because he knew every single drop of blood was actively bringing his ultimate vision to life.
Okay, but Arnold is a unique case. How do we, the people listening to this, hack our brains to find pleasure in our daily, less cinematic grind?
That's where the progress loop comes in.
Right. The framework outlines this psychological mechanism. It flows like this. Action leads to progress. Progress triggers a reward. The reward creates a good feeling. And that good feeling generates results, which motivates you to take more action.
And the absolute secret to hijacking this loop is making the initial win incredibly tiny.
Tiny wins.
Yes. This relates to dopamine prediction errors in the brain. If your goal is to build a habit of going to the gym, your goal shouldn't be to lift heavy weights for an hour.
That's too much friction.
Way too much. Your brain will resist that massive expenditure of energy. Your goal should simply be to drive to the gym parking lot.
Just the parking lot.
That is the win. You take the action, you measure the progress, and you immediately reward yourself, maybe buying a coffee or a new workout shirt.
By tying a tangible reward to a micro-action, your brain starts to associate the friction of the work itself with pleasure.
Exactly. The creator of the blueprint gives a great personal example. They forced themselves to send 500 cold emails for their business before they allowed themselves to play video games guilt-free.
Wow, 500.
Eventually, the dreaded, boring task of cold emailing became neurologically linked to the pleasure of the reward.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once you have your vision mapped out, your physical health dialed in, your income growing, your network curated, and your dopamine work loop hacked, the material claims there are 3 scientifically backed traits found in every single successful person, no matter their field.
Let's break these down.
Number 1, grit.
Grit is defined here as the ability to fail repeatedly without losing your enthusiasm. The material shares the story of billionaire John Paul DeJoria.
The Paul Mitchell hair care guy.
Right. Before he built his empire, he was literally going door to door selling dictionaries. Imagine the friction of trying to sell a massive, heavy dictionary to someone on their porch.
I would hate that so much.
People were constantly slamming doors in his face, but he just kept going, knocking on the next door with the exact same enthusiasm. They also mentioned Kobe Bryant.
Oh, the Italy story.
Yeah, at 13 years old, Kobe went to a basketball camp in Italy and got completely crushed. Everyone was faster, better at shooting, better at defense.
The core insight from the Kobe story isn't just a cliche work hard message. It is about detaching your ego from immediate results. Kobe accepted he couldn't beat them that week.
He looked at the long game.
Right. Grit in this framework is the mathematical acceptance that relentless repetition over a 10-year timeline will eventually overtake raw, day-one talent.
Which flows perfectly into secret number 2. Consistency. Just doing the reps and sets even when it feels pointless.
Like the creator's video challenge.
Exactly. The creator of the video shares how they used to mumble terribly. Nobody could understand them on camera.
So what did they do?
They woke up at 5 a.m. every single morning, set up a camera, and talked into it loudly and clearly for 5 minutes straight.
Did they post it?
No. They didn't write a script, they didn't post it on the internet, they just practiced the volume and the articulation. Over time, that raw consistency cured the mumbling.
And that leads to the third scientific secret. Iteration. Iteration is where you elevate beyond just working hard. It is making small, strategic tweaks based on feedback.
You can't just repeat a mistake forever.
Exactly. You don't just repeat the exact same failing action blindly. Pablo Picasso is the example used here. He didn't just paint one masterpiece and call it a day, nor did he paint the same bad painting 1,000 times.
He adjusted his style.
Right, analyzing the feedback over and over until his work resonated.
They also give a great modern example of a freelance video editor. If an editor's videos aren't landing clients, they shouldn't just send out 1,000 more identical pitches.
That's just doing the same thing.
Right. They iterate. They add jump cuts to the portfolio. They tweak the subtitle fonts. They change the pacing, and they test the market again. Great keeps you in the game. Consistency gets the reps in, but iteration is how you actually improve the underlying product.
Okay, so that covers the 3 scientific secrets. But then the blueprint throws in a bonus secret.
Number 4.
Yeah, a 4th ingredient that isn't exactly scientific, but they argue is absolutely vital to making the rest of the framework operate, and that is self-belief. And not just polite, quiet self-confidence. We're talking absolute, almost delusional self-belief.
This is a crucial point. The material uses Kanye West as an example. Love him or hate him, Kanye has always possessed an unapologetic, unwavering belief in his own genius, long before anyone else agreed with him.
True?
They also point to Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. Long before he actually had money, he viewed himself as rich. He negotiated with wealthy people as an equal because in his internal reality, he already was one.
Fake it till you make it, basically.
Kind of, but deeper. Humans act in accordance with their internal beliefs. If you deeply believe you are a king, you will unconsciously adopt the posture, the tone, and the decision-making of a king.
I can hear people rolling their eyes at the delusional self-belief concept, thinking it sounds like pure manifestation nonsense.
I know, but there is science here.
Right. The blueprint ties this back to Aristotle, who basically said, if you believe it to be true, it is so. And to back up this ancient philosophy, the framework brings in actual neuroscience, specifically the reticular activating system, or RAS.
The reticular activating system is a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that filters information. At any given moment, your brain is processing roughly 11 million bits of information per second from your environment.
11 million.
But you are only consciously aware of about 50 bits.
So it's a massive filter.
Massive. The RAS decides what gets through. The creator shares a great story to illustrate this. They decided they wanted to buy a specific car, a white Chevy Camaro with claw marks on the headlights.
Very specific.
They ended up naming it Sylvia. But before buying this car, they rarely ever noticed Camaros on the road. But the second they decided it was their goal, their brain's RAS was programmed to look for it. Suddenly, they saw white Chevy Camaros everywhere.
Because the brain knew it mattered now.
The lesson is that your brain will only find the opportunities you explicitly program it to look for. If you program your RAS with absolute self-belief and a hyper-specific vision, it will filter out the noise and highlight the pathways, the people, and the opportunities required for success.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? To sum up this entire deep dive, if you want to get ahead of 99% of people, you do not need to burn yourself out working 24/7 without a destination.
Right.
You need to bypass the low-status traps of society by defining a clear personal vision. You need to secure your physical and financial foundations through strategic health practices and high-income skills.
Build the pillars.
Yeah, and you need to engineer your social environment intentionally. And finally, you need the grit to consistently iterate toward your goals, armed with an almost delusional level of self-belief, programming your brain's radar.
This raises an important question, however. As we synthesize all of this, we must remember that success is highly subjective. Well, as the material noted, Elon Musk's goal is to go to Mars. But your infinite goals list might be to start a thriving local bakery, or raise an incredibly healthy family, or draw comic books in your free time.
Right. It doesn't have to be billions of dollars.
The framework works regardless of the scale of the goal. It's not about achieving what society tells you is valuable. It's about defining your own parameters so precisely that the hard work required to get there eventually feels like play.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. We spent this entire time talking about how you can build and run this strategic, highly intentional operating system for yourself.
Yeah.
The source talked about treating your social life like a strategic system, literally using a spreadsheet to track your friends' interests and intentionally curate your environment. But think about your own brain for a second.
All right.
If you apply that same ruthless intentionality to tracking your own daily inputs, every podcast you listen to, every reel you scroll, every conversation you entertain, What kind of algorithm are you currently programming for yourself?
Wow, that's a great question.
And is it leading you toward your infinite goals list or someone else's?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you and keep learning.
We'll see you next time.